1939 Tin Man because I grew up on it. It was my favorite movie as a child.
I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
When you were a kid, The Wizard of Oz was just a magical ride full of flying monkeys, catchy songs, and a sparkly pair of ruby slippers.
Give them back to me, or I'll... It's too late. There they are, and there they'll stay.
But once you grow up and re-watch it, something strange happens. Suddenly, the Technicolor Wonderland looks a little darker.
And technically unexplainable journey into the outer stratosphere.
The characters feel more complicated, and the jokes? Way sharper than you remember. What if Oz was never meant to be just a children's tale at all? Let's pull back the curtain and take a look at the things only adults notice in The Wizard of Oz.
Annie M must have stopped wondering what happened to me by now. Oh, Scarecrow, what am I going to do?
The magic isn't always what it seems. When you first watch The Wizard of Oz as a child, the film feels like pure wonder. It pulls you into a world of color, magic, and whimsical songs.
The wonderful Wizard of Oz, too kind he is a wizard of Wiz, if ever a Wiz there was, if ever a Wiz there was.
And for most of us, that was more than enough. But coming back to it years later with adult eyes, you realize there's a different kind of magic at work. It's not always the enchanting kind. Sometimes it's unsettling. Other times it's painfully honest. And occasionally it's just plain strange. What hits hardest right away is how the entire story hinges on something adults understand far too well: the desperate need to escape. Dorothy isn't just caught in a storm or running from a crabby neighbor. She's trying to break free from a world that doesn't listen to her. No one believes her. Her guardians are well-meaning but distracted. Her community treats her like a silly child. And in a very real way, her entire journey begins not because of a tornado, but because of how invisible she feels. What we miss as kids is that Dorothy's home life isn't just boring, it's alienating. Her aunt and uncle don't mistreat her, but they don't really hear her either. That's something many adults can relate to, more than they'd like to admit. Being surrounded by people who care, but don't really see you, can be lonelier than being alone. That loneliness simmers beneath her early lines, especially when she sings about a place where there isn't any trouble. That's not the voice of a girl chasing dreams. That's the voice of someone trying to breathe. The way the movie frames her desire to run away feels harmless when you're little, but when you grow up and look again, you realize how deeply Dorothy is craving control. She doesn't want to be saved. She wants to decide for herself what matters, where to go, and who she can be. The irony, of course, is that it takes a fantasy world and a false wizard to show her that everything she was searching for was already inside her. That kind of lesson hits differently when you're older and realize how much time people spend chasing something they already had all along. But there's also something darker hiding beneath the colors and songs. For instance, think about how quickly Oz tries to sort people into categories. Good witch or bad witch, friend or foe, right or wrong. It's a world of absolutes wearing a costume of imagination. The same way society tries to label people before getting to know them. And Dorothy, still young and learning, doesn't question those labels at first. She accepts that Glinda is good because she says so. She believes the Scarecrow is stupid because he says he has no brain. She trusts that the wizard will have answers because someone told her he could. But isn't that exactly what adults come to learn over time? That most people, places, and promises are far more complicated than they seem. Even the wizard himself is a stunning metaphor. As a child, you see him as a disappointment, just a man behind a curtain. But as an adult, you understand he's every institution, every leader, every authority figure who was never actually magical, just good at pretending. You realize that half the people society tells you to trust are making it up as they go along, hoping no one notices. That truth isn't comforting. It's sobering, but it's real. And what makes The Wizard of Oz so brilliant is that it tells you all of that without saying it directly. There's also something unsettling about the way Dorothy wakes up at the end. She's back in Kansas, surrounded by familiar faces, but there's an eerie silence to it. She's changed, and they haven't. She remembers everything, but they don't. And she tries to tell them, but they laugh it off as a dream. That's a deeply adult moment, trying to explain something profound and life-changing, only to have others dismiss it because it doesn't fit their understanding. It makes you feel like you're speaking a language no one else understands. It's not just a return home, it's a return to isolation. Then there's Toto.
Toto, darling. Oh, I got you back. You came back.
Her only real companion. In a world where everyone treats her like a child or a problem, Toto is the only one who listens without judgment. He represents something deeper than a loyal pet. He's her constant, her emotional anchor. And what stands out now is that Dorothy never asks for the wizard to fix her world. She never wishes to be someone else. She just wants to be heard, loved, and free from fear. That's what Oz symbolizes. Not escape, but agency. So when you watch it now, knowing all the pain that exists in between childhood and adulthood, you don't see a girl running away anymore. You see a girl confronting the world the only way she knows how, through imagination, courage, and self-discovery. And that's when you realize The Wizard of Oz was never just a fantasy film. It was a coming-of-age story hidden inside a musical. And the more you grow, the more it reveals itself. What other secrets are hiding in plain sight in this technicolor dream we thought we knew so well? The professor knew more than he let on. When you're a child, the figure of Professor Marvel seems like a kind stranger who offers Dorothy a moment of warmth and comfort just before the storm rolls in. He appears quirky and harmless, sitting inside his caravan with a crystal ball and a cup of tea, speaking in wise tones and curious riddles. But when you grow up and revisit that same scene, you begin to notice something that feels unsettling beneath the surface. Adults often watch this part of the film and suddenly realize that this man is not just trying to help Dorothy, he is actually manipulating her. Not out of malice, perhaps, but certainly with a practiced hand. Professor Marvel takes one look at Dorothy and immediately understands that she is young, afraid, and running away from home. Without needing any backstory, he begins weaving a tale based on what little she reveals. He tells her that her Aunt Em is heartbroken and sitting at the kitchen table, hand pressed against her face, longing for Dorothy's return. And of course, this deeply personal image convinces Dorothy to turn around and go home. But when you think about it, how would he possibly know that? He has no crystal powers, no access to her family, and no confirmation that anything he's saying is true. He reads her body language, guesses just enough, and fabricates a story designed to pull at her heartstrings. And it works. For a child, this may feel like kindness. For an adult, it feels like a man using emotional leverage to manipulate a vulnerable girl into doing what he thinks is best. There is no mention of the weather worsening or the threat of the storm becoming dangerous. He doesn't warn her about the tornado at all. He simply wants her to go home. The real question becomes whether Professor Marvel was helping Dorothy out of concern, or if he was simply trying to rid himself of the responsibility of caring for a runaway child. And while he does show up later in the story after the dream fades, it is only for a moment, asking if Dorothy is all right before fading back into the background. This subtle character decision becomes one of the earliest signs in the film that not everything is as innocent as it seems. Adults recognize that safety can be an illusion, and those who appear kind may sometimes be driven by their own motives, even when cloaked in concern. What else does the film hide in plain sight behind cheerful music and glowing colors? Could it be that Dorothy's journey down the yellow brick road was never about fantasy at all, but a deeper lesson, disguised as a dream? Shall we follow that road and see what else we missed the first time around? The secrets behind the Emerald Curtain. When we first encounter the Emerald City, it sparkles like a dream. The towering green buildings, the fantastical architecture, the music, the uniforms, it all comes together to paint a picture of perfection. As children, we see it as the ultimate destination, a magical reward at the end of Dorothy's yellow brick journey. But once you grow up, the Emerald City starts to look more like a cleverly disguised metaphor. It isn't just a place of awe, it's a facade. Behind all that green glass and showmanship, the wizard turns out to be just a man with a bag of tricks. That moment when Toto tugs back the curtain reveals something far deeper than a visual gag. It pulls the curtain back on our childhood understanding of authority, of idols, and of power itself. The all-knowing, all-powerful figure we've been taught to believe in turns out to be just another flawed human trying to keep up the illusion. Adults recognize the satire of it all. The smoke and mirrors, the microphones, the illusions. It's all theater, and that's the point. The wizard isn't just pretending to be magical, he's pretending to be infallible. And that hits hard when you consider how many of us, as grown-ups, have watched leaders do the same thing. Whether it's a boss, a politician, or even a mentor, the realization that authority doesn't always equal wisdom is a lesson every adult learns at some point. And it's a theme The Wizard of Oz wraps in glitter and spectacle, so that when the reveal finally comes, it lands with a deeper punch. The moment Dorothy and her friends discover the truth, they aren't just disappointed. They're forced to face the reality that their journey never really needed the wizard's help at all. The real power, the intelligence, the courage, the love, was inside them the whole time. But the wizard's deception runs even deeper.
Well, I was instantly acclaimed Oz, the first wizard deluxe.
When he hands out the diploma, the heart-shaped clock, and the Medal of Bravery, he isn't giving them magic. He's giving them symbols. And adults notice this instantly. We've been handed certificates, plaques, and trophies that often mean less than the work it took to earn them. The Scarecrow wasn't suddenly intelligent because he received a diploma. He was already solving problems long before that. The Tin Man was full of compassion well before his heart-shaped token, and the Cowardly Lion had already stared down flying monkeys and witches before that shiny medal landed around his neck. The wizard simply gave them what they already had, dressed in something tangible. And that's another sharp truth adulthood teaches us. Sometimes the only difference between belief and disbelief is a symbol that helps us recognize our own value. And what about the citizens of Emerald City? As a child, they seem like happy-go-lucky background characters. As an adult, they come off as something else entirely. They're obedient, uniform, distracted by beauty rituals and parades. They change their minds the moment a new leader appears. It's easy to see echoes of our own world in their behavior. They celebrate the witch's death not out of justice, convenience. They're ruled by fear and spectacle, and when the wizard is exposed, they pivot without protest. The moment you notice this pattern, it's hard to ignore. It's a reminder of how easily people can be swayed when spectacle replaces truth, when convenience overrides conviction. And then, there's the moment the wizard offers Dorothy a ride home in a balloon, a scene that initially feels triumphant until it goes horribly wrong. The rope slips, the balloon floats off without her, and the wizard, who was supposed to be her ticket back, is gone. As kids, we think it's just another bump in the road, but adults see something different. We recognize the heartbreak of misplaced trust, the sting of realizing that the people who promise to help may not always follow through. It mirrors the countless times we've waited on someone to come through for us, only to be left watching them drift away. Dorothy's moment of abandonment resonates more when you've lived through disappointment, when you've watched someone leave without saying goodbye, or failed to keep their promise. And that's when Glinda returns with her final lesson. Dorothy had the power to go home all along. She only had to believe it. To a child, it feels magical.
And this is my room. And you're all here. And and I'm not going to leave here ever again.
To an adult, it feels bittersweet. How many times have we looked outside ourselves for the answers, only to discover we were capable the entire time? It's a metaphor for self-reliance disguised as a fairy tale, a storybook version of the harsh but beautiful truth that the journey we take is what gives us the strength to stand on our own. And yet, even knowing all this, we still crave the spectacle. The Emerald City, for all its illusions, is still dazzling. The wizard, for all his tricks, is still likable. And maybe that's another adult revelation. Just because something is fake doesn't mean it lacks value. The wizard may be a fraud, but he's a well-meaning one. He's not evil. He's just doing what he can with what he has. And maybe in a way, we all are. What other seemingly magical characters might not be as flawless as we once believed? Ready to take a closer look at one of Oz's most beloved sidekicks? There's more going on with the Scarecrow than straw and stitches. The Scarecrow's secret depths. At first glance, the Scarecrow seems like a comic relief character. Floppy, awkward, and full of endearing self-deprecation, he's the kind of companion that makes the yellow brick road feel less lonely and a lot more fun. As kids, we laugh when he fumbles or when his straw limbs fly in every direction. But as adults, we begin to realize there's more to this patchwork traveler than just slapstick humor. His insecurity about not having a brain masks something much deeper, an unspoken truth about self-doubt, intelligence, and what it really means to be smart. The Scarecrow insists from the start that he's nothing more than a pile of straw lacking brains.
Why, anybody can have a brain. That's a very mediocre commodity.
Yet time and again, he demonstrates cleverness, empathy, and strategic thinking. It's the Scarecrow who comes up with most of the practical ideas to get the group out of trouble. He's the one who thinks of how to rescue Dorothy from the witch's castle, who sees through illusions, and who challenges the status quo. His dialogue is thoughtful, often laced with metaphors and questions that echo philosophical ideas more than empty-headed babble. The irony is hard to miss once you're older. He's convinced of his own lack of intelligence, yet he outsmarts nearly every obstacle in their path. Adults recognize this instantly because it mirrors something so many of us carry inside. That feeling of imposter syndrome, that inner voice telling us we're not smart enough, not qualified enough, not worthy of our ideas. The Scarecrow becomes more than a character. He becomes a mirror. How often have we talked ourselves out of something, only to later realize we were capable the whole time? His journey becomes a powerful reminder that intelligence isn't always measured in degrees or diplomas.
And with no more brains than you have. But they have one thing you haven't got, a diploma.
Sometimes it's knowing when to listen, when to speak up, and how to think through a problem even when you don't believe in yourself. And then there's his relationship with Dorothy. As kids, we might see it as nothing more than friendship, but look closer, and there's an emotional intimacy that's easy to miss when you're young. It's the Scarecrow who walks beside her first. It's the Scarecrow who she hugs the longest. And in that emotional goodbye before she returns home, it's the Scarecrow she says she'll miss the most. "I think I'll miss you most of all." That line, so softly delivered, hits differently once you've grown up and known the weight of a special bond. There's something quiet but powerful in their connection, a deep understanding that surpasses even the fantastical setting they're in. Adults can't help but wonder if the Scarecrow represents more than just a friend. Could he be a metaphor for wisdom born from innocence? Or maybe the person we lean on when we're lost? What's also striking is how the Scarecrow interacts with authority. He questions the wizard. He reflects on his purpose. He openly admits his fear of failure. These aren't traits of someone without thought. These are signs of introspection. He wants a brain, not because he lacks function, but because he lacks confidence. And how often do we see that in real life? People chasing validation through titles, promotions, or certificates, hoping those external markers will finally silence the internal doubt. The Scarecrow doesn't change after getting the diploma. He only starts believing in what was already true. It's a subtle but essential lesson for adults navigating careers, relationships, and identity. Then there's the deeper symbolism. In literature, the Scarecrow has often been interpreted as a stand-in for the American farmer, honest, underappreciated, and thought to be less educated, yet holding the wisdom of lived experience. Watching The Wizard of Oz with adult eyes, that symbolism becomes sharper. His yearning for a brain is a reflection of how society has undervalued certain kinds of intelligence for generations. Book smarts versus street smarts, degrees versus grit. These conversations are just as relevant now as they were in 1939. Even visually, the Scarecrow changes as the film progresses. His movements, once jerky and chaotic,
I could while away the hours, conferring with the flowers, consulting with the rain.
become more purposeful. His posture straightens. His voice becomes steadier.
Do you think if I went with you, this wizard would give me some brains?
It's a subtle physical transformation that mirrors his internal one. And if you weren't paying attention, you might miss the beauty of it. It's a cinematic cue that tells us growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it happens in gestures, glances, and choices. And sometimes it happens simply by being believed in. That's why the wizard's gift to him, which is the diploma, feels both hollow and heartbreaking. It's the paper, not the proof. The wizard didn't give him a brain. He gave him a certificate that said, "You're allowed to believe you're smart now." And somehow, that's enough. Because isn't that how it works for most of us? We don't suddenly become more capable. We just finally believe that we are. The Scarecrow's journey doesn't end with a flash of power or a grand transformation. It ends with quiet affirmation. He always had what he needed. He just didn't know it. That lesson, wrapped in straw and whimsy, lingers long after the credits roll, and it makes us wonder how many other characters are hiding truths we only see with adult eyes. Ready to look closer at another misunderstood companion? Let's follow the yellow brick road to the Tin Man.
Here he is, the Wizard of a Wiz, if ever a Wiz there was. If ever a Wiz there was, the Wizard of Oz.
Whose quest for a heart might reveal more about emotional intelligence than we ever realized as kids. The Tin Man and the hidden pain of emotional repression. When we first meet the Tin Man, he's standing motionless in the forest, rusted stiff and unable to move. As kids, this is amusing and strange. Another magical moment in a land filled with enchanted characters. But as adults, the image hits differently. A man frozen in place, unable to speak unless helped by others, stuck in silence and unable to function because he's lost his heart. It feels haunting. It speaks to a deeper kind of emotional paralysis, one that countless adults know all too well. The Tin Man claims he wants a heart so he can love. But as the journey unfolds, we realize that he already feels, and deeply so. He's the one who cries the most.
Rust. You rust so dreadfully.
He worries, he comforts, and he shows more empathy than any other character in the group. Yet, he clings to the belief that he is incomplete without something physical to prove he can feel. Watching this again with older eyes, it's hard not to see the metaphor here. How many people walk around believing they are broken simply because they don't have the words or validation for their emotions? Adults understand that sometimes the worst wounds are the ones that don't bleed. Emotional neglect, trauma, heartbreak, these things can harden people over time. The Tin Man's rusting feels like a poetic reflection of this. He was once a man with flesh and blood, who loved and lived. But piece by piece, he was replaced with cold, hard metal. Was it society? Was it grief? Was it time? He never says. But that transformation, slow and irreversible, stripped him of what he valued most. And he's been mourning that loss ever since. In Baum's original stories, the Tin Man was a woodcutter named Nick Chopper, who was cursed so that each part of him would be replaced with tin until nothing of the original man remained. It's a haunting backstory that never made it to the film, but its essence lingers. This idea that we can be changed by life until we no longer recognize ourselves is something adults carry heavily. The Tin Man doesn't just want a heart. He wants to feel whole again. He wants to feel human again. And isn't that what we all want after life has chipped away at us? His deep sensitivity, especially in moments when he tears up over small acts of kindness or cruelty, shows us that he is perhaps the most human of them all. And yet, he doubts it because he lacks something tangible. That craving for a symbol, a heart-shaped clock from the wizard, is another moment that feels painfully familiar. People look for medals, diplomas, rings, or trophies to validate what they already know inside. We chase proof instead of peace. What's striking is how the Tin Man uses his axe. He never fights with rage. He never lashes out. He carries his blade not to harm, but to protect. And when he does wield it, it's with hesitation and purpose. In a way, it's a lesson in emotional boundaries. He's strong enough to cut through barriers, but gentle enough to pause before he acts. Adults who have had to build emotional armor know this balance intimately: how to be soft without breaking, how to be strong without losing kindness. Another detail we begin to notice with age is how the Tin Man responds to others. He listens. He's patient with the Cowardly Lion's fear and Scarecrow's insecurities. He defends Dorothy. He often puts others' needs before his own. These aren't just signs of emotional intelligence. They're signs of someone who has been through pain and wants to protect others from it. There's a tenderness to him that's quiet, but undeniable. He isn't just searching for a heart. He's trying to remember what it felt like to be vulnerable. And perhaps that's the tragedy. Somewhere along the way, the Tin Man equated vulnerability with loss. He fears it. He craves it. He's stuck in a paradox. He wants to feel love, but doesn't want to get hurt again. Adults watching the film often recognize this inner conflict because it mirrors their own. Many of us have stood in the same place, scared to open up, but desperate for connection. It's easy to see why he resonates more as we get older. His pain is subtle. His hope is quiet. But both are achingly real. Even his interactions with the wizard carry emotional weight. When given the heart-shaped token, he breaks down, not because he feels different, but because someone finally told him he was enough. Someone looked him in the eyes and said, "You are capable of love." How many people go through life needing to hear those exact words? As with the Scarecrow, the Tin Man's transformation is internal. The wizard doesn't give him anything new. He just gives him permission to believe in what was already there. And that might be one of the most quietly powerful messages in the entire film. You already have everything you need. You just forgot. So, while kids might see the Tin Man as a shiny, funny character with a squeaky joint or two, adults know better. They see the loneliness behind his smile. They hear the heartbreak in his voice. And they understand the weight of living without a heart. Not because it's gone, but because you're afraid to use it. But there's still one more traveler who completes the group. One who hides his fear behind a loud roar and a trembling lip. One who, like so many of us, masks anxiety with performance. What does the Cowardly Lion really teach us about bravery once we've grown up enough to look past the tail-wagging antics? Let's keep going. There's more to notice than we ever expected. The Cowardly Lion and the truth about real courage. At first glance, the Cowardly Lion is comic relief, a jittery, tail-chewing bundle of nerves who jumps at his own shadow. But as adults, we start to see something far deeper in his character. He doesn't lack bravery. He simply feels fear and acknowledges it. That distinction is everything. While the Scarecrow doubts his intellect and the Tin Man questions his ability to feel. The lion's struggle is the most relatable of all. He feels unworthy because he's afraid. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in spite of it. And throughout the film, the lion repeatedly acts when it matters most. He throws himself between danger and his friends. He walks into the witch's castle, trembling but determined. Every step he takes is steeped in fear, and yet he moves forward. For many adults, that's the truest kind of bravery. Getting up each morning despite anxiety, showing up to hard conversations, protecting those we love when we're falling apart inside. The lion reminds us that being brave doesn't mean being fearless. It means feeling afraid and showing up anyway. His journey is not about gaining courage. It's about realizing he already had it. And like the others, he only needed someone to believe in him so he could start believing in himself. He didn't roar his way to bravery. He loved his way there. And maybe that's the real lesson for grown-ups watching The Wizard of Oz, that strength isn't loud, love isn't weakness, and the magic we seek has been with us all along. So what else have we missed in Oz all these years? As adults, we don't just see a fantasy anymore. We see a mirror. What parts of yourself did you find hiding behind the scarecrow's smile, the Tin Man's silence, or the lion's tremble? Maybe Oz was always real, just not in the way we thought.